Before the president headed to Dover, I sat down with his national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, to discuss the final hours of America's engagement on the ground in Afghanistan. Jake, let's start with the drone strike in eastern Afghanistan against that ISIS-K planner and facilitator. First of all, can you tell us their importance to ISIS? And secondly, President Biden says this will not be the last strike against the people responsible for the attack that killed 13 American troops at Kabul airport. So how far is he prepared to go to make ISIS pay?
The president will stop at nothing to make ISIS-K pay for the deaths of those American service members at the Kabul airport. He will ensure that we get the people responsible for this, that we continue to put pressure on the group responsible for this, and that we continue to take targets off the battlefield. With respect to these particular targets, these were facilitators and planners who were involved in the movement and production of explosive devices. Our over-the-horizon counterterrorism capability was proven out. They identified the target, they took the target out, and they are now in the process of identifying further targets to action.
If we had such good intelligence about ISIS-K that we were able to strike in a little bit more than 24 hours, why didn't we move against the group before the bombing at Kabul airport?
As targets have been developed, we have actioned them. This was the one that we had available to us, and we took it in a timely basis when we had it. With respect to the attack at Kabul airport, we of course have been warning for days that such an attack could take place. We took action to try to prevent and disrupt such attacks, but of course all we can do is mitigate risk. We cannot eliminate risk, and this is a fundamentally dangerous and high-risk mission. The president has said that from the beginning. Those of us working on it have reiterated that from the beginning, and it continues, Chris, to be very dangerous. There are more threat streams that we are working actively to try to disrupt and prevent. And as the president has said, another attack could occur at any time. He has directed his commanders on the ground to take every force protection measure possible to ensure the safety of our troops as they complete their mission.
I want to pick up on exactly what you just said, Jake, because we're now in what White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki called the most dangerous part of the mission, where on the one hand, we're still trying to evacuate Americans and Afghans from Kabul airport, but at the same time, we're trying to roll up the U.S. military, their operation, their mission there. I want to know what these final hours are going to look like. Are Americans and Afghans who are trying to get out, are they going to have to get through checkpoints on their own? Are they still going to be able to do that? Or at this point in these final hours, are the only people who are going to get into the airport people whose travel has been arranged to get there?
I'm going to be careful in answering this question, Chris, because it is imperative that we protect the operational details of this incredibly sensitive period of the operation. Because as you say, our military on the ground, those brave men and women out there, those skilled professionals are right now both trying to finish the job of getting the remaining American citizens and Afghan allies out of Afghanistan and complete their retrograde. And this is a highly sophisticated, carefully calibrated exercise. But to directly answer your question, as we speak here today, our forces there can continue to bring in American citizens and other critical people who have helped us and get them on planes and get them home.
And Jake, what's your expectation? How many Americans, how many of our Afghan allies will be left behind when we finally pull out at the end of August 31st?
Let me start with American citizens. We have evacuated at this point nearly 5,500 American citizens from Kabul. We can never get an absolutely precise count of how many Americans were in Kabul because Americans aren't required to put themselves in a database as living in Afghanistan. But we believe, based on all of the extensive and systematic outreach that we have done, that we are down to a population of 300 or fewer Americans who are still on the ground there, and we are working actively in these hours and these days to get those folks out. But I also want to underscore, Chris, a very important point, There are some people who have chosen so far not to leave, and that is their right. And after August 31st, they are not going to be stuck in Afghanistan. We are going to ensure that we have a mechanism to get them out of the country should they choose in the future to come home. The Taliban have made commitments to us in that regard. We intend to hold them to those commitments, and we have leverage to hold them to those commitments.
Well, let me pick up on that. I want to play a clip from something that Jen Psaki said late this week about our relationship with the Taliban. Take a look.
We have an enormous amount of leverage. This is our view over time. That includes economic leverage. It includes leverage that we will make clear to the Taliban as it relates to coordination to continue to get American citizens and our partners out.
Do you really believe that we have, quote, enormous leverage over the Taliban, enough that we're going to be able to get out Americans and Afghan allies after we pull out? Do you really believe that? And do you really believe that there's a chance that we might be able to reset up a U.S. embassy in Kabul?
Chris, no one here trusts the Taliban. No one here is counting on any words the Taliban offer. What we are focused on is actions. And yes, the answer is emphatically yes. We do believe that the United States of America possesses substantial leverage to ensure that American citizens and others get safe passage out of that country. And that if they do not, we can bring to bear enormous pressure on the Taliban with a swift and forceful response to their blocking any American citizen, whether before August 31st or after August 31st. That's not about trust. That's about the capabilities we have to hold the Taliban to the commitments that they have voiced directly and the commitments that they have made publicly. And we are working in a united way with dozens of other countries in the international community to ensure that's the case. As far as a U.S. embassy is concerned, right now, this is going to come down to the Taliban actually following through before we can talk about things like embassies and recognition and the like.
But I think some people question whether we have leverage. I understand when you talk about there's pressure we can bring to bear. We have frozen billions of dollars in Afghan assets. There's all kinds of ways we can squeeze them without actually using force. But let me take an example of one member of the Taliban. That's Khalil Haqqani, who is the head of security for the Taliban in Kabul. This fellow, Haqqani, he authorized suicide bombings against U.S. forces in Afghanistan over the years. The State Department has a $5 billion bounty on this guy's head. Do you really believe that the kinds of soft power pressure you're talking about is enormous leverage over a zealot like Haqqani?
First of all, Chris, billions of dollars is not soft power. That's real, cold, hard cash that matters. Secondly, and probably more importantly, no one is more clear-eyed about who the Taliban are and who the Haqqani network is than the national security professionals that have been working on this issue for the past 20 years. The question is not whether these are good guys or bad guys. We know the answer to that question. The question is whether or not they will ultimately see it as being in their interest to let Americans through. A lot of people suggested 12 days ago that they wouldn't, that people under the Taliban head of security wouldn't let thousands of Americans have safe passage to the airport and get out. We have evacuated more than 5,000 Americans in that time, and we intend to ensure that any American who wants to leave Afghanistan at any time will be able to do so.
Jake, finally, President Biden was asked on Thursday about his decision to pull out of Bagram Air Base. Here was his answer.
They concluded, the military, that Bagram was not much value added, that it was much wiser to focus on Kabul. And so I followed that recommendation.
But the generals gave that recommendation after President Biden earlier this spring had overruled their recommendation that he keep at least 2,500 troops on the ground. My question is, instead of laying this off on the generals, shouldn't the commander-in-chief take full responsibility, given that they had to make a decision on Bagram based on the conditions that he set for them?
Chris, you've heard commander and ultimate responsibility for everything.
Given that they
is commander-in-chief, he has actually said the buck stops with him. But let's be real about Bagram. Chris, tactical advice from the commanders on the ground. What is the right operational method of executing a drawdown? And on that, he placed great weight on the advice of the people in the field. A strategic decision to continue a war into its third decade without American troops fighting and dying civil war in another country. On the strategic decision, that's a decision only a president can make. On the tactical decision of which is the right airport to have for an evacuation, of course, any responsible president would give significant weight to the advice of the commanders on the ground, and their advice was to close Bagram and focus on Kabul.
Jake, thank you so much for taking time out of this very busy schedule right now to talk with us. Thanks again.
And thanks for having me.